Okay, good morning, everybody. And welcome to today's coffee break. My name is Aaron Morris. I'm a sales engineer with Long in Colorado Springs. And today I wanted to talk to you all about the redesigned Daikin Rebel rooftop unit lineup. The Rebel units have been a strong product for us, a high efficiency rooftop unit, and they've recently been redesigned for R32 refrigerant. So want to get into kind of the changes that we're going to see to the product, to the cabinets. So the Rebel lineup goes all the way from 3 tons. This slide shows 150 tons for the Rebel Applied, but we're actually not there yet. That's coming soon. Right now, we can select units up to 75 tons. So from 3 to 30 tons is going to be the commercial Rebel rooftop unit. And then we have options down to 20 tons up to 75 for the applied product, the Rebel Applied. Big difference there. The applied product is much more configurable. We can add different sections to it. So that's why you see some of that overlap with the 20 to 30 ton size range, where if you have a small, say, medical office building that has, limited OR space, so you don't have a huge load, but you need return fans, redundant fans, true final filters, maybe humidifier section. Those are all things that we can add into the Rebel Applied that would not be available on the smaller commercial Rebel units. So it's good that we have some of that overlap. So we're just going to go through and take a look at the different cabinet sizes and some of the changes from the 410A product to the 32. We're not going to get into the details of R32 refrigerant. Andrew Tobin and Peter Cedargreen with Daikin are going to cover that topic next week, so that'll be an important one to tune into. So moving forward here, this is the look at the Rebel Applied, kind of with the cutaway. You can see the different modules, fully configurable, so we can add modules, which adds length to the selections. For the purpose of this presentation, kept the units pretty basic. We still have all the features that have been available to us. We still have the double wall foam injected casing, ECM fans, fan arrays, variable speed fans, variable speed compressors. So none of those options have gone away. They have expanded the heat pump line, which Madeline covered about 2 weeks ago. So if you missed that, I'd recommend going on to Long Building Technologies YouTube site, and you can find the full list of coffee breaks there. There's over 200 videos there you can take a look at. So looking at a 75-ton kind of nominal size unit, really this looks very familiar. On the Rebel Applied, I'm starting with the bigger units because the most drastic changes are on the smaller cabinets. So when we look at these Rebel Applied units, they look and select very similar to what we would have gotten with a 410A selection. Here we're at 28,000 CFM. We have our efficiencies, which are in line with what we would have seen with 410A, but you can see we are using R32 for this selection. The difference that I'm noticing is in the compressors. Typically, I'm seeing slightly higher amp draws in the compressors than we would have seen with 410A. So if you have a project that would have been designed around 410A, and now you're having to switch it over because with the Rebel Applied product, our lead times are about 34 weeks. So the 410A unit is no longer an option. We are moved on to the R32 units when it comes to the Rebel Applied product. With the smaller Rebels, lead time's better. So we're looking at like 12 weeks. So you can still order 410A commercial Rebel units. So you have an option there. But big thing to watch out for is going to be your electrical. In talking to the factory, When it comes to the A2L refrigerants, UL has updated their 6355 standard, and it does require a little bit of a change to how they calculate MCA and MOP. So they're now doing that off of, the higher of the two loads between either, say, your compressor or your fan motor and your VFD. So if the VFD nameplate has a higher amp draw than the compressor, you're using the VFD nameplate to calculate your MCA and MOP, and that's going to be an industry-wide change. And then looking at the drawing for the 75-ton Rebel Applied unit, again, looks very similar. The dimensions, you can still pick the same furnace sections, same modulating options, same fan arrays. So your overall dimensions come in the same. The condenser section was still the same dimension. So if you had a project that was designed with 410A, should be relatively easy to move it over to an R32 unit. Again, do pay attention to that electrical. On this one, I did a comparison of a 40-ton unit. I had a 40-ton selected with 410A, kind of matched it up with the same fan options with an R32 unit. And again, slight weight difference, so worth paying attention to your weight. But big difference is the compressor arrangement. In this case, I've got 3 compressors compared to what would have been 4 compressors. And we have higher amp draws that are driving our MCA and MOP. So electrical went up on this 40-ton unit. Efficiencies were in line. I mean, that was within a few points. And when I get to the smaller units, I got a side-by-side comparison so we can see exactly how much has changed. But then again, looking at the drawing, nothing's different there. So as far as the layout of the Rebel Applied units, you're not going to have any problems. So when we get into the commercial units, we've always had 3 cabinet sizes, the A, B, and C cabinets. The A goes from 3 to 6 ton, B from 7 to 15, and C from 16 to 28. So this is what the R410A units look like. Again, you can still order these units, but they have to be shipped before the end of the year. So again, that's going to vary with lead time and how many orders the factory gets, as far as when they're going to cut off orders for the 410A units. So if you have some, now would be the time to get them ordered. The new design still have the 3 cabinet sizes, A, B, and C cabinets. Same kind of ranges, 3 to 6 ton, 7 to 15, and 16 to the model number shows a 31, so it's basically a 30-ton unit. And again, on the bigger unit, not a drastic change, but when you look at the 2 smaller cabinets, they look very different. They've moved away from, if we go back over here, you can see we've had this cantilevered condenser design on the Rebels. We've moved away from that on the smaller cabinets and moved that whole condenser section up onto the roof. So the unit looks quite a bit different. So starting with the bigger C cabinet, which has, kind of the smaller changes. Selected a 30-ton unit here, a Model 28 and a Model 31. Both of these selected at 10,000 CFM with 8063 entering air conditions. And you can see on the R32, we get slightly higher capacity out of the unit with the same inputs. Efficiencies are very similar to both units. Weights are very similar. And then when we look at the dimensions, we'll take a look at a dimension sheet, because sometimes I notice the R32 dimensions on this tech data sheet include the outside air hoods. So sometimes the length can look deceiving, but the footprint is definitely smaller on the R32 units. And then again, come down to the compressors, and you can see big difference. Still have 2 compressors, but difference in the amp draw, which then affects our MCA and MOP. You can see we've gone from 100 amp MOP to 110 on this particular unit. And looking at the dimensions, very similar in the C cabinet. They've extended the base rail out to fully extend underneath that condenser. So we get a little better protection there. And then they've raised the height of the air tunnel. If you remember a while back when we were having supply chain issues, they opened it up to some additional condenser fan manufacturers, ECM motor manufacturers, and we got this raised condenser section. So now they've matched the air tunnel with the condenser section, so we get a more streamlined box again. And then looking at your duct drops, they've matched that up. So if you had a C cabinet designed with 410A and you're switching it to R32, biggest thing to watch for is going to be your electrical. Maybe pay attention to weight, but you won't have any issues matching up your duct design. Now looking at the B cabinet, here it says 7 to 17 tons. Traditionally that was 7 to 15 tons. You can see we've got the condenser section moved up to the roof is the big difference there. So side by side, these were selected at 6,000 CFM with 8063 entering conditions. Again, with the R32 unit, we get a higher total capacity, and we're starting to see some benefits of that higher capacity in the efficiencies, right? Especially part load efficiency. So that's a plus. And when we do see differences in the compressors, we moved from 2 compressors to 1 larger compressor, which again does affect our electrical data. So our electrical has gone from 50 MOP to 80, so a significant difference there. Again, has to do with how they're calculating that and the difference in the compressors for the R32 units. Still have the modulating compressors, and we're getting the additional capacity, which is helping our efficiencies. And then when we look at the dimensions, you can see the whole condenser section that would have been cantilevered off to the side of the curb has now just been moved up onto the roof of the unit, reducing the overall footprint of the unit, and those service clearances around the unit has all been brought kind of to the center of the unit. So that's a benefit if you got a crowded roof to deal with. But otherwise, if you look at the air tunnel and the outside air hood, very similar. The overall dimensions, you can see we had a 91 air tunnel, 120 on the overall size. We're still at 118 overall length, but that air tunnel's gotten smaller, and then the width has gone down considerably because we've moved that condenser section up onto the roof. We did get taller, so that if you have a sightline kind of project where that matters, pay attention to that. But on your duct drops, no problem there. They matched up those duct drop connections, so your duct design is going to be okay. And then in the A cabinet, this is just from 3 to 6 ton. Again, got that condenser section up onto the roof. These were selected at 2,400 CFM, 8063 entering air conditions. And same trend, cooling capacities higher on the R32 unit. And part load efficiency is higher. So we get a benefit there with that added capacity. Smaller footprint, comparable weight. But again, if you look at our amp draws on the compressors, we do have higher amp draws on the compressors, higher watts. So when you come to our electrical data, we do have a higher MOP, MCA, and MOP. So again, that's the theme here is we're getting improved capacity, comparable or improved efficiencies, but you do need to watch out for your electrical there. Could be affected if you're transitioning from a 410A design to R32 units. But even in the small cabinet, where you can see the footprint has same length, smaller width, footprint's gone down, height's gone up with that condenser section on the roof. But when we look at the duct drops, no changes there, so we still line up with our old duct drops. And one of the biggest benefits of moving that condenser up onto the roof, if you look at the old design, the 410A B cabinet, we did not have an option for side duct connections in that B cabinet. So if you needed that, we'd wind up with a plenum curb with side duct connections. So by going to the condenser on the roof, we now have options for side duct connections in all three cabinets and in the Rebel Applied cabinets, of course, where we can just add sections as needed. So big benefit there. So with that, that's the major changes to watch out for. Kind of underlying theme is, pay attention to weight and pay attention to your electrical. But outside of that, you shouldn't have any problems with matching up your ductwork or hitting your capacities. And next week, as I mentioned, do a big dive into the R32 refrigerant and kind of why Daikin has chosen R32 to be the refrigerant of the future here. That's going to be Andrew Tobin and Peter Cedargreen with Daikin. So please tune into that. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a good day.